Margaret Brennan is in Washington. So, Margaret, if it doesn't impact the Russia probe, what does Congressman Gowdy see as the impact of this memo?
Well, the impact that he intends versus what might actually happen could be two different things. I mean, clearly the president said that it vindicates him, which Trey Gowdy said, wait a second, no, I'm not trying to undermine Bob Mueller's investigation here. That needs to continue, and there are legitimate things that need to be investigated. But his complaint seems to be more about the specific process that this warrant, this FISA warrant, went through 4 times, different judges, and he claims political opposition research wasn't clearly identified. It was identified as opposition research, but not specifically who paid for it. And he said that should have been made very clear to the judges when they reviewed it. But he, at the same time, acknowledged that the surveillance was something that perhaps should have been considered, given that there was other evidence out there. So his complaint seems to be very narrowly focused on the process that this FISA warrant went through, and that's different than a number of Republicans who are using this memo Trey Gowdy helped to author as evidence that they say the Russia probe is just a political witch hunt, which is, of course, what the president claims. So whether there's long-term implications in terms of oversight or changes to the law that oversees this application process for warrants is something to watch. But remember, President Trump just signed off on that surveillance court to be renewed and the warrant process. So unclear yet what the big implications will be. But I got to tell you, it was a big, huge political story here in Washington and vastly overshadowed the president's own State of the Union, which was just on Tuesday.
Right. That seems like a lot longer considering all the news. But let's go ahead and play another exchange between you and Congressman Gowdy.
Now, we should dig into this because you are, from my understanding, the only Republican investigator on the House Intelligence Committee who actually viewed the FISA applications, everything that went into essentially putting together this memo. So when you're talking about this Steele memo, you are not saying that it was the sole piece of evidence used to justify these 4 authorizations of the surveillance warrant, are you?
No. It was not the exclusive information relied upon by the FISA court.
Would it have been authorized were it not for that dossier?
No, it would not have been.
All right. So, Margaret, unpack that exchange for us, because as you mentioned in your first answer, Congressman Gowdy's position would seem to be far more nuanced, perhaps, than some of his Republican colleagues.
That's exactly right. What he's saying is in this application process, which, as explained to us, you have to go through every 90 days to renew this warrant to surveil this individual named Carter Page. He's an American who was working with the Trump campaign and had been on the FBI's radar all the way back to 2013 because of contact that he had with Russian operatives. And so Congressman Gowdy is saying there that the information gathered in this politically funded dossier, the so-called Steele dossier, was in the file for the application for the warrant. And because it was there, that causes deep concerns for him, because he says it wasn't flagged as politically funded, and that there were also news articles in there that didn't, in his view, meet the standard of what should be included in a warrant application. But he didn't detail all the other classified information that may have been in there. And remember, multiple judges 4 times renewed this, and the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, who President Trump himself handpicked to take that job, is one of the individuals who signed off on at least one of these warrants. And so it's hard to know, without seeing all the information that Congressman Gowdy did, why he is arguing that the warrant wouldn't have been approved were it not for this politically funded research. The judges would know the answer to why they approved it. But in Congressman Gowdy's view, he thinks there's a real problem with the process itself. It's a fairly narrow issue, but one, as you can see, having pretty big political implications in Washington.
Well, it's interesting, Margaret, because Congressman Gowdy's candor there comes, as you know, at a time when he's retiring at the end of his term. He told you that he is a, quote, lousy politician. Let's listen to that.
Why do you say you're a lousy politician?
I see multiple sides of a single issue. And the fact that someone disagrees with me does not make me challenge their love of the country. It doesn't make me believe that they're corrupt. I've got a lot of friends on the other side of the aisle. We disagree on this issue, but I don't question their love for the country, and I don't think the end justifies the means. I think the manner in which we get places matters. And in politics, too often, winning is the only thing that matters. And look, every hero I have is lost, every one of them. So losing is not the worst thing in the world. Not knowing what you believe and not caring enough about it to fight for it, that's the worst thing in the world.
Do you think you served justice in your time in Congress?
Not like I did in my previous job. I tried. It's about winning in politics, and that is not what the courtroom. There's a reason we throw out search warrants even though we find a murder weapon. There's a reason we throw out confessions even though we think the person did it. The process matters. The end does not justify the means. And in politics, it's just about winning. And I don't want to live like that.
Wow, Margaret, absolutely remarkable to hear that bit of self-reflection there from Congressman Gowdy. Can you talk a little bit about Gowdy's role in Congress and his message in that exchange with you there?
Well, one of the things, Elaine, that makes that so extraordinary is if you think back on Trey Gowdy, he really became, in some ways, a household name in Washington, at least, because of his involvement with the probe into Benghazi. Remember the deaths of 4 Americans at the U.S. diplomatic outpost in Libya. And that became one of the most politically fraught, nasty arguments on Capitol Hill, led to a committee probe that he led. Remember, Hillary Clinton herself underwent something like 11 hours of questioning. He was at the center of a really tough political fight on that front. Now he's in the middle of yet another one with this memo. And for him to say that things have gotten just to be too much for him is remarkable, because he has lived through and at the center of some of those political battles. But it is also, something that if you look thematically at what is happening, there are dozens of Republicans in particular who have chosen to leave Congress because of various reasons, some of them saying basically the job stinks. I don't like what the job is these days. I'm not getting to legislate and create laws, which is what I thought I was coming to Washington to do. Some of them are also just looking at what will be tough political races coming up in November of 2018 and saying, I don't want to go through that again. So some of it may be a reflection of where we are in the state of Washington today, and some of it, may be some political motivations of others trying to seek different spots. Some of it may just be exhaustion. So it was interesting to hear someone like that say, I don't want to live like this.
Yeah, it was a compelling conversation, to be sure, on Face the Nation. Margaret Brennan, thank you so much, Margaret.